they should be terminated like any other employee of the city.
At
the
will.
commission
Maybe,
appoints.
maybe if we can differentiate, I think I may see where some confusion is coming in. When we speak to the term city attorney, we are meaning the person that is identified as the city attorney for the city, not the department, not the office, okay? So right now, the only person that works in the city attorney's office that has a contract with the city is the city attorney. Not all of us in the office. The rest of us are hired by the city attorney as well as going through the OD and HR staff process and things along those lines. And we are employees of the city. The city attorney under contract is considered an employee of the city as well. Does that help?
Yeah, but I guess when the city's looking for an attorney, they send out the request for qualifications, and I assume then that the city attorney would submit it and say, look, these are what I'm going to need, this is what I'm proposing, and then if I'm going to need additional staff, or that should be covered with.
Not necessarily. There's different models of how cities have attorney services. There's the model where you go out for legal services and you hire a firm through a request for proposal. That's outside counsel. Then there is in-house counsel, and those are for cities that are large enough to have in-house personnel, and there's savings there. If you have outside counsel, then they're billing at a rate that's hourly. And in the municipal world, that is anywhere between $175 to $250 an hour. And it doesn't sound much, I know, but it's because they're using taxpayer dollars to, if you were doing a developer agreement, then you probably charge about $600 an hour for that if you were advising a developer. So you have somebody outside counsel that's making $250, maybe $200 an hour, and then the other side, the developer attorney is making $600 an hour, right? That's what small cities experience. Cities the size of Brownsville, we're the 18th largest city in, I believe, Texas. They have in-house counsel. Our particular charter references a contract for the attorney. What I'm proposing is that we remove that contract, treat them as an attorney that's an employee of the city, which is already treated as an employee of the city, and take that ability from the commission to remove the attorney at any point that they want, with or without cause. Because under a contract, normally you have severance and all this other provisions in there. And that is something that I advise against. And so to bring us in line with other cities that are our size or bigger, I'm proposing that we move our city in line with other cities that are large to have a city attorney office created. I know the provision is kind of confusing because there is a city attorney's office, legal department, but it's not it's really, when you look at the provision, section 22, it is more something that has been done traditionally. It's not really codified in an ordinance or in the charter. And what I'm proposing is to become like other large cities and have an office that creates the city attorney's office without having a contract, and then provide that city attorney the ability to control outside services with city commission's approval, and also appoint the assistant city attorneys. So if you're asking what changes from now to under this proposal, what you're taking out the contract for the city attorney. So they would just be an appointed attorney, an appointed official of the city, which is treated like an employee. Same thing goes with the city secretary. City secretary right now is appointed by the city manager. Other cities, they do it that way, or they do it by the city commissioner, city council, but they don't have a contract for services, right? Because they're considered an appointee or an employee of the city. I would recommend that the city attorney's office be treated the same way.
Are you going to be providing a fiscal note on these to the city commission?
On these particular ones, I mean, fiscal note.
A fiscal note in saying that, okay, if this passes, this is what's fiscally going to cost the city moving forward. Or is it going to be neutral?
Well, I would say it's neutral right now because this is essentially how it is in place. You have a city attorney that gets a set salary that's approved by city commission. That's not changing. The only thing that's changing is wouldn't have a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Currently, there are 4 other attorneys in the office. We have some vacancies. So the other attorney you're looking at is Jennifer. But as far as fiscal note, the office setup wouldn't change.
Now, I read somewhere in one of these slides about not to exceed 2 years. It's
No.
highlighted in yellow.
Well, yeah, that's what it's currently written as.
That's what's written now. Are you going to have language where it moves it like not to exceed 50 years or 10 years or 3 years or something?
Well, no, so I believe that there was some action on the city manager, maybe that will be later this evening, on amending the limit of years that the city manager's
I
contract
think we had
can
talked
have.
about maybe going to 4
We did
to
that last.
entice somebody to come in, even though that's a moot point now, but to entice someone from out of town to move in and give them 4 years.
Last meeting, we did it.
You're right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We
all
were-
right.
Yeah,
So
it
if-
wasn't
if
gonna
you-
apply for this cycle either way, right? Because it has
So-
to be approved and blah, blah, blah.
I mean, going back to,
Next opportunity.
and I guess I'm looking at it as independent counsel or outside counsel, but, if there's if the city enters a contract with the attorney, aren't they still subject to the rules of, professional responsibility and improper fees, and they can only, collect fees when they've been earned? And so how are there severances, or how is there these other deals relating to terminations if they haven't earned those fees?
And that's what my concern is, which is why I'm recommending this. In one of our neighboring cities, and the city attorney, I don't want to out any city, but the particular city attorney didn't have a contract and they still received a severance. And I think that's not in line with the Texas rules of professional responsibility. And so what I'm recommending is we remove that from the city attorney so that they're just an appointed official / employee, not necessarily subject to a contract. And the salary or compensation would be get set by the city commission, as it is now.
And I get that. I'm just a little concerned with trying to make a decision within a week on something that I think is going to drastically change, or it seems like is going to change a great deal of how the city attorney's office works. And I'm not understanding why you have to implement something that is already in existence through our professional rules. I mean, you can't enter into a contract that, it's void, right? You can't enter into a contract that's contrary to the professional rules or the rules of professional.
So then what you're saying is we could never have a city attorney?
Well, you could, it just has to be, any contract, any agreement with the attorney has to be subject to the rules. And if it's not, then.
And that's,
fine.
So you can't have a city attorney being claimed. Like what I'm reading is that these are a lot of restrictions placed on city commission and on the city manager. And it does not,
Right now, the city manager doesn't have authority over the city attorney.
for the assistant.
I'm sorry?
Yeah,
or
the
the
city
assistant.
manager should be able to hire the assistants in conjunction, hopefully, with the city attorney, but removing that authority from the city manager, who is,
Well,
I mean-
just to clarify that somewhat, right now, the city manager has no purview on the city attorney's office, as it is now.
the assistant.
If we make no changes, city manager has no control over the city attorney's office. And the reason for that is politics. Politics usually plays into, and the city attorney needs to be a neutral, as you understand, a neutral individual that advises city commission, that doesn't play into politics with city management.
So who hires the assistants right now?
The assistant city attorneys and paralegals are hired by the city attorney.
Big picture, or I guess bird's eye, what exactly are you concerned with or trying to address from the existing? Are you trying to say that they need to be at will? Are you trying to prevent the severance? Or are you trying to, I guess what is it? That way we know exactly, because this is a lot of information that you're giving us that I
Yeah,
presume you want
so-
us to submit by next week.
So if you go up to section 22 again, my concern is that currently, right now, the city commission appoints the city attorney. The client is the city. The city attorney has they don't answer to the city manager. The city secretary does, and I have issues with that, but I'm not going to recommend anything for that. The city attorney appoints their assistants, and the city attorney, of course, the city commission can terminate those assistants or the city attorney, but the assistants don't have a contract with the city. The city attorney does. And my concern is, with regards to the rules of professional disciplinary conduct,
But they're employees of the city, right?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, so you're saying that the assistant attorneys do not have a contract, but they are employees of the city.
Yes, just like the city attorney,
So,
but they're appointed by the city commission.
but,
They're not, he's not at will, put it that way, right?
Is essentially, if you look at the terms here, if they have a contract that's executed, they're not a true at-will employee. But I don't believe the city attorney should be appointed by the city manager. I think you'd have
right, I
conflicts
agree with
there.
that.
But I don't know, I mean, and I'm not by any means an ethics expert, but I don't know if that, I mean, if you are entering a contract, I mean, you could have provisions in there because you're giving up work, you're giving up other opportunities. And so, I mean, there's always provisions for, earned retainers up front because giving up other opportunities. And so I guess if that's the only issue, I mean, then I would suggest writing a letter to the Texas Ethics Commission and saying, look, is this proper? And go from there. I'm not sure as to exactly what you're trying to address and how we can do that.
I'm trying to remove the contract provision for the city attorney.
And to create a city attorney's office memorialized in the charter. As it stands right now, there's nothing in city charter, city ordinance that says we have a city attorney's office other than that language right there.
But they don't, I guess as it is now, they don't have to enter into a contract with the city attorney. They could just, right?
Let me see. Yeah, so right now, under section 22, essentially says that no employee or officer, I'm adding an officer, the employee shall have a contract, with the exception of the city manager and the city attorney. And which shall not exceed 2 years in duration. And so I'm not proposing anything for the city manager. I think that's standard for city managers to have contracts, but they're under a different set of ethics. They follow TCMA ethics. Attorneys have to follow the Texas Rules of Disciplinary Professional Conduct. And my concern is with regards to severance or any other provisions that might be in there, I don't believe that an attorney should have that kind of relationship with their client being the city or the city commission. I believe that the individual should be appointed. Problem is, if you remove the city attorney, if you add in a provision that says, shall the city attorney have a contract with the city, that would strike out that language in section 22, and it would basically abolish anything in reference to a city attorney, other than a few vague provisions dealing with taxation.
What is the reason that there should be a contract between the city commission and a city attorney? Why do they need a contract? If they're going to just be hired, just like the assistants, everybody's at will, whatever, but why would a contract be needed?
We are set back. See, this was done in 2000 was the last changes. We're 22 years behind what we should be. This is probably a provision, I would assume, this is an assumption, that was added in at a time when we had outside legal services. And I think that's the reason.
Well, you still have outside legal services now. You have delinquent tax attorneys.
Correct.
You probably have personnel, somebody that comes in like Rick Navarro and these guys that come in to do personnel stuff. You've got other bond counsel. So you already employ outside legal counsel.
Correct.
Right
But-
now.
But they don't have, keep in mind, they have engagement letters.
No.
they don't
They would have an engagement letter.
They would have.
Yeah.
They would have engagement letters, not contracts for services.
Right. They
They
would
would
have
have
that.
engagement letters that provides the terms of how they will provide their professional services.
Yeah,
to
and
the
that would
city.
be for a specific moment of
Service.
time. It
Correct.
could be
That
whatever
would
it
be
is.
up to a certain amount.
So
That would be. for
I don't
the
have
bond.
I personally don't have a problem with giving the city attorney a contract and having the city attorney hire the people that are going to work for that person. At the end of the day, they're all city employees. So the only one that would have a 2, 3, or 4-year contract would be the city. And that's the city attorney, correct? But there's nothing to preclude the city from letting that city attorney go for X amount of reasons, right?
Chairman.
Can you move to the next slide, please?
Can I ask a question of Will?
Yes, sir, of course.
Would it be fair to say that there's two elements of your suggestion here that you could boil down for David Merrill? One of them is that, as Jennifer said, we should memorialize the fact that there is an office of the city attorney in the charter. And the other is that that city attorney, once chosen and selected by the city commission, is an at-will employee of the city. Those two things are true, are they not?
Yes.
That, as you see it, for a city of the size of Brownsville, that is the proficient, efficient, and best practice.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we're not a city the size that we have legal services for everything. We have a few areas where we might have
A city
some
that what?
coverage.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
We're not a city that what?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We're not a city that what?
We're not a city that has outside counsel predominantly as the appointed city attorney. We have actual, and I think for the last maybe last 4 or 5 city attorneys, they have all been employees of the city / with contracts.
Can you move on to the next slides? I want to be able to see. Okay, the next one.
And is it not the case that those city contracts were partly brought into place because of the political environment in which the appointment took place?
With regards to outside counsel,
No, with regard to city attorney, it's him or her. Is it not the case that in the past that was a political, could it be a position of some controversy?
I'm not sure what you're referring to as far as like the historical part of the controversy,
That's the old age showing.
but I can.
What you're saying is we don't need a contract for an employee
No.
as the
So,
head of
so
the
this is my
office.
heartache. My heartache is, of course, there's a vacancy in the office, right? And no surprise, I'm applying for it. But if I were to have a contract, I would refuse that contract and I would refuse any severance. If the city commission 6 months later says, well, this is not working out for us, you got to go. But there's nothing to say that the next city attorney will feel the same way. They will probably want the 2-year contract because it provides them some certainty, and they would probably want a severance. And those are things that I believe should not be done based on the professional rules that we have to adhere to, and it's not in the best interest of the taxpayers.
But why couldn't they have a 2-year contract based on their charter right now? They could,
That's what I'm saying. They could have the contract.
right?
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
I disagree, but
don't think
that's
it's a good-
it's not my, I wasn't charged with making recommendations other than to bring it before the board.
So, okay, so then the way I understand it, because I think there's a difference in, the term of art you're using is the term contract. So you can get into at-will employment contract, which states what your scope of responsibilities are going to do, what your obligations are and whatnot, and then you can be terminated at will. And so I think, I think there's a difference between, they can enter into a contract that states, here's what you're going to be paid, here's your duties, and here's how everything's going to be done. And then you can still be terminated at will. And so just because you have a contract does not mean that you have a right to continued employment. It just says, here's your terms. And so I guess that's the issue. So your problem is that you don't want the city to enter into a term contract where you have to be fired for cause, in which case, and I don't know, but I would think that would violate some sort of rule because I don't think you could be forced to have representation. Right. And so then you'd have to be able to seek additional counsel and not be penalized for looking for different representation. Would that be the issue, is that we don't want to bind the city to some form of an agreement, but there still needs to be an agreement to delineate the services, the compensation.
Well,
how everything's gonna be.
I mean, the agreement would be.
That's why we are creating the office of the city attorney as well as doing away with that contract provision. If you see in this section, it says the city attorney or such other attorney selected by him, her, with the approval of the city council shall represent the city in all litigation transactional matters. He shall be the legal advisor of an attorney of counsel for the city and all the officers and departments. That right there summarily says that the city attorney's office is legal representation for the city, unless you go to outside counsel, where in this case, on the next slide, which is the contract, right?
The charter would be a contract that would be the agreement between the city and the.
Yeah, I don't want to use the word contract, but it would be the
The scope.
of,
Okay, and
Yeah.
then the only thing pending would be, here's what you're gonna be paid.
correct. And the thing with outside counsel is, right now, outside counsel, every department up to a certain amount can hire an attorney. So we could have an apartment for 30 departments, an attorney for 30 different departments up to a certain amount. City manager's office can hire their own attorney as well.
Okay.
And that conflicts with quite a bit of what I think number 4 would kind of bring in as far as the scope.
No, okay, I got it.
I think the only thing that I have a concern, and I just expressed it, Will, is that sometimes you need outside counsel for a very complex economic development deal. And so that's not necessarily extraordinary or an emergency. So I just worry about, or collective bargaining. We use outside counsel for collective bargaining through services. So it seems like very restrictive, extraordinary emergency. It seems like act of God kind
Yeah,
of thing.
well, no,
versus, hey,
I
collective
think
bargaining means that.
emergency would be what you're referring to, but extraordinary importance, I think, would cover bonds or economic development or other kind of specialties.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
Because
sure.
emergency sounds like it's emergency.
Yeah,
right?
that's why there's the word
Maybe
and,
or
extraordinary
special-
importance and emergency.
Well, I
Or
think
it
it
could
would
be
be
or.
anything beyond the city attorney's, scope of practice. I mean, they're not gonna be going and handling trademark issues or copyright issues because you all aren't
Right,
prepared to do
because then,
that.
of course, our license is on the line.
Right.
We understand that,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Would it be okay to table this item and we can, I
Well,
mean,
This is
This-
just a presentation.
We don't vote, right?
No, you wouldn't vote on this. That would be later on in the agenda.
Yeah, this is just the work
And
session.
I have one more slide to show as far as our recommendations. It is, yeah, as a placeholder, it's been on there since November.
Just
On
one
the
last
technical
point on-
amendments, what we have noticed as far as like punctuation and whatnot, which we haven't really put in this presentation because we can send you a complete list or a red line of the charter. But when we read through the charter, we found provisions that reference, of course, the adoption of it. You can see here, for example, section 6, commissioner's oath, yada, 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 shall hold their respective offices until the second Tuesday in December, AD 1917, and until the successors are elected and qualified. Or you have provisions like section 7, new governing body, that refers to the particular conditions of the charter adoption in 1917 or 1918. And so what we're proposing is to remove these provisions as they're kind of archaic. It really shouldn't be in there because now we're in 2022 or 23. And so what I would propose in some of our amendments is remove those archaic provisions and just basically, because the way it is, for example, section 6, until, you have a lot of their little qualifiers until the second Tuesday in December and until their successors are elected and qualified. So you see that throughout the charter in certain provisions. So as far as technical amendments, the recommendation would be to remove those. If you leave them in, all it serves is, there's no harm, no foul. If you leave them in, they'll serve as historical information.
So just going back to the attorney, would that be, would the motion or would the recommendation be to permit you all to present that? Or are you asking us to vote on it, approve it, and send it to the commission?
Well,
Or
going
could we
back
just
to,
say, Approve the attorneys making the recommendation.
so we're, with the technical amendments, that is going to be something that's separate. But with the city attorney office, we're just presenting to you all, if the majority believes that it is a good idea and they should present it to the city commission, then then you would do so through your vote, and it would be one of the items listed.
Well, and I guess the only concern I have is the limited time that we've had to be able to discuss this. But if, because of the time constraint, and you all would want to, and you all would want to field the questions from the commissioners about why, what, where, then I don't necessarily have an issue with that. If that be permitted.
I guess to answer your question, it's on tonight's agenda because you all are the ones that have been resolved by the commission to bring proposals to them. If you all decide to take this to city commission as a recommendation of your department, or I'm sorry, of your committee, based off of what our department is providing you with information, our office will then be available next week, obviously Tuesday, because we're at all the meetings, to present this item along with the committee, saying it was brought to them, to us by our department for us based off of what you guys have been resolved to do by the commission.
Can you have, because I'm assuming there's more than 2 items, right? Can you have them for us to review, or these are the only 2?
No, there's more. These are, as far as the technical amendments?
Yes.
Yeah, there's more. These are
Could
just
you bring them to
examples.
us for next week?
Yeah, we'll present it.
And then we can look at them and then decide, vote on each one if that can be just added to the agenda for next week.
Do you all need our blessing to present something to the city commission in terms of a charter amendment?
Not necessarily,
the answer.
but that
We're
would
just,
be,
we don't need to present it to them. You can do it on any office. I think the last time that we had this, somebody else recommended something that we had nothing to do with.
The city commission recommended that themselves.
Yeah, right?
I
Yeah.
think it would.
Yeah.
I
The
think-
city commission did. It didn't come from any other office. It was
The municipal court judge issue came from the city commission?
the municipal court judge came before this committee and brought forth that it should be extended from 2 to 4 years. This committee then voted on it, took it to the city, and then it went to the city commission, and the city commission decided to go ahead and put it on the agenda.
Okay, so.
So
it's a-
last time around, what happened was the city manager requested all of the departments to come before this board with technical additions or changes, amendments, what they wanted to see done for their department.
And that's
one
what
of
you
the-
all are doing,
Sort of, like
in
the same.
essence. Okay,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, you do not need our blessing.
Well, we wouldn't want to usurp the process.
I mean, no, but
and so
well,
the process is
let's
take
forget
it to the
that.
commission,
But-
or the
yeah,
charter
that-
review.
Let's forget that. I mean, I just think, do you need our blessing to take this forward to the city commission?
I would not take this to the city commission unless I had y'all's blessing.
They need our blessing, but they can present it.
What, I mean, technically, if they're watching, they probably heard the presentation, but I would not take I would
Well,
not take it to them unless.
That
I had
is
y'all's
you.
blessing.
Okay, I'm just talking, let's take the personality out of it, just saying, if one wanted to, they could do it without our blessing.
Correct. They could
Okay,
do it without
that's
your
that's all I
blessing.
need to know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If there's
And
no,
if we don't vote on it today, then it's not gonna be part of the
it
presentation.
wouldn't be part of the presentation, on
Next
the
week.
17th, correct?
Yeah. So, just take that into consideration.
Right, so then, I guess with regards to the attorney amendment, I guess I'd have a motion to invite you all to present in front of the commission, your proposals.
Well,
No,
this is
we're
a-
not
sorry,
voting on it right now.
Yeah, this is a presentation part. We're
workshop.
just providing
coming
the
down somewhere?
information. Sir,
Just one last thing. I want to clarify that I'm aware myself of outside counsel operating along with part of the city. And I think it was a little loosey-goosey about how we would get started there. Anything that we can do in the charter that begins to improve the understanding of what we want from an outside counsel will be good. So if it is like it reports to the city of, the office of the city attorney or whatever, the clarification of that language, you know what I'm talking about.
yeah, no, I do. I mean, right now with outside legal services, if the city commission wanted to do away with the city attorneys the way it is right now, They could, of course, and it's something similar to what Harlingen did. Harlingen did consider whether they wanted to do in-house or hire outside counsel. They looked at how much it would be as far as benefits, and they decided that outside counsel would be best. 5 years from now, I would love to ask them how that's working out for them. But with regards to our city, with the whole situation with outside counsel, because it's exempt from professional services, right? And is not part of the professional services act where you have to do the two-step, right? You look at qualifications and then you negotiate price. If it's not one that is great, then you go to the next one. With attorneys, you essentially hire whichever attorney you want. And a lot of the times it's based on politics. Who's the attorney taking out for lunch or coffee? I'm not necessarily saying that this occurs at this particular city, but it's where I've seen it occur at other cities.
I have a quick question. So how many attorneys do we have on outside counsel for the city right now? That you, obviously you had nothing to do with it because it's,
We
that
have
are-
one for
that are
trademarks, we have one for bonds, we have one for employment matters, we have one that's general services. And we also had one for civil service. but
Okay.
Through the prior city attorney, we have kind of brought in a few of those. And based on quotes that we received, we narrowed it down a little bit.
and this is, I don't want to say under contract, but this is a yearly basis with the same company.
Yearly basis for the same company maybe for 20 years.
Okay. So under what you're proposing, you would have the right to look for the firm to take care of one matter, but it would still have to be presented to the city prior to them coming on board.
Correct.
So you're taking the what he's basically doing is taking the politics out of everyone that we have, not under contract,
When
but
you have a city attorney that advises the city, whether they're in-house or outside counsel,
yeah.
they need to be above the politics and not be involved in it. And so this is an effort of removing the cushion or the contract that the city attorney could enjoy, right? And so the next city attorney might kick me in the backside for doing that, but also removing the politics involved with outside counsel.
I think this question might have been asked, but can you give us a better idea, budget-wise, like how this would change what is already spent? And also, I mean, like, so I realize also that outside counsel can be expensive, but it's not something that you could really be able to provide, as a service. So how, I don't understand
So
how that would
currently,
change.
right now, there are, the city attorney's office comprises of 5 attorneys. Of course, as I said earlier, we have a few vacancies, but the city's attorney's salary is set by the commission, and that is, it's public knowledge. I think the prior city attorney got 180,000. With regards to the first assistant city attorney, their salary is based, and the rest of the attorneys up to the prosecutor, so it's 4 individuals. Their salary is based on a compensation scale and a study that the OD and HR department conducted with the city manager's office. And so they have given those positions based on the qualifications, the scale of what for example, a prosecutor could get. And so the scale for a prosecutor right now is, I think, 72,000 up to 82,000. And it increases for each position, and it's based on qualifications.
So by taking the politics out of it, ethically, anyone has a chance to work for the city or the firm that you need to hire because it has to be presented to the city. That would give opportunity to more people than what we have now because of the politics, basically.
Yeah, well, I don't want to speculate, but you would remove the politics from the hiring the outside counsel. And right now, when it comes to appointing the city attorney, it's the same process. The city commission appoints, and so that can be political on its own. as is with any other position that the city commission might appoint.
Right, but can you clarify, sorry, how that removes the political aspect? Like how these amendments would remove
Of the
that?
outside counsel,
Yeah,
because you're bringing the contracts to the city commission for their approval.
I
Right
see.
now, you don't necessarily have to unless it's over a certain amount,
over how much
over 50,000.
per year?
Well, it depends on how you interpret it. Some attorneys that are outside counsel will interpret it to be per project or per year. And that's unfortunately standard in the industry. So, any other questions?
And I'm sorry, so if a given department needs outside counsel, if it's under $50,000, they're able to do it from their internal departmental budget.
Correct.
Is that right?
They
Okay.
do have to, unless it's been delegated away, they do have to get the city manager's signature on it.
Okay, so then the city manager is the one who will appoint outside counsel.
No, I'm saying for departments. Currently, right now, it would be departments.
So each department has.
No. Each department, the way it's done right now, where outside services are not addressed in the charter or ordinance or in policy. Technically, and I'm being, I guess, facetious, every department could hire their own counsel up to 50,000 if the city manager approves it. And of course, budget constraints are there. I don't think a department would do that. But a good example is one of our departments recently asked if they could hire outside counsel for something that we can cover. And we, of course, because we have a good working relationship, said, if it gets to that point where we need to do that, then we'll do that. But right now, we can cover you. And that's a good example of course, when a system works, that's where you can catch those particular expenditures. But when you don't have a system that works, when there's distrust between the departments or the city attorney, then you have no control. The city attorney has no control. And I would say even the city commission has no control unless it goes over 50,000.
I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this. I had concerns and I voiced them publicly about information that we were getting even at these meetings. And if I were a department head in the city, I would like to have the option of hiring somebody that I can trust to, deliver accurate information. And so it does get tricky. And now, if there is an extra step that it goes through the city manager, then, then it's not, it doesn't feel like it would be politicized. So that's, so I'm having, again, trouble understanding where that
Well,
would come from.
And if you, of course, we're getting into hypotheticals, but to answer that, I would say with the right director, you would have a director that has the city's interest involved. So they wouldn't question the city attorney's advice if the city attorney also has the city's interest in mind as well. If you have a director that is insecure and then worries about their particular position and they question the city attorney's role or their advice, then you would have an instance where you have a director using taxpayer money to obtain their own legal services, basically getting a second opinion from the attorney that the city commission had appointed to advise the city on those matters. So this method would, by putting this restriction on outside counsel, you would limit that expenditure. Because it's not an endless chest that the departments have. I mean, it is taxpayer money. And that would put a
Yeah, the
particular.
only thing I would add there, Daisy, and just understanding what you said, I think is different. It's not like a regular manager, right? Because it's a attorney that they have rules they need to follow. So the interest that they have in mind, I think, shouldn't be in conflict. That's the only thing that I would say.
Can you clarify?
Yeah, so let's say they do hire a separate attorney and the city attorney, as he just said, they both have the same interest in mind. So in reality, there shouldn't be any conflict. Whether you trust one or the other, or you believe one is better skilled than another, that's a separate issue. But as far as the, keeping the customer interest in mind, it should be the same.
Hold on. And the budget would be based on,
Well, the budget is set by the city commission.
right,
So it would be based on whatever the city commission appropriates.
okay.
So it was, just to be clear, if nothing occurs with this, everything will still be the way it is. It's just that the city attorney will have a contract. And departments would be able to still hire outside services unless city commission adopts policy, which can be done. They can adopt policy that would dictate that.
So one quick question, what you put up here, that would be on the ballot?
No, it would be more in terms of course, like with any other provision, these particular, the 1 through 5 that you saw the provisions, it would be like number 1 would be, shall the city attorney be appointed by the city commission? And then that would be on the ballot. And then some of this language might be able to be put in there as well. But besides the ballot in the election notice, as far as the actual changes, the notice that would be placed on the polling locations would indicate kind of like a red line of the city charter. So the voter can go in with the ballot, the red line, and they know what they're voting on. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm good.
Next item, presentation and discussion related 20 recommendations by the Charter Review Committee's Presentations Subcommittee.
Yeah, this is a workshop, I guess.
The subcommittee has met by Zoom twice. We've had discussions not unlike the discussions we've had here tonight. We shared our thoughts. We had a first draft and it threw that out and went to the next draft. And our committee, I think, is ready to make a presentation on about 2/3 of what we've talked about so far. And I'd like to ask Ms. Zamora to make that presentation. She did the final compilation today.
Now, this is a work in progress, so, as we go through the slides, feel free to, make any suggestions for any changes. This is the best that we came up with. Sorry, next slide. We're breaking it down into PUB-related charter amendments, and then later we'll have non-PUB charter amendments. Our goal, as the subcommittee framed it, is to build a framework of responsibility, communication, and governance such that city commissioners are informed as to the infrastructure, financial activities, and obligations of PUB, especially addressing the impact on ratepayers and residents. And here we listed some of the things that we took into consideration as we made deliberations. Some of the priorities were building community trust, as well as improving communication and oversight. Balanced with that was a consideration of potential adverse effects of charter amendments. We spent a lot of time discussing different things, for example, potential increased cost to ratepayers. That was the bond rating discussions, as well as the city transfers. That's also in the part of the charter. Another potential effect would be having, like if you change board turnover, right, that can uh, have effects such as less organizational understanding. And there's also risks from destabilizing management. Uh, uh, And again, these are risks that could, affect the ratepayers and community. This is the current language. I think when this is presented to City Commission, I would be good to read through everything. These are only a few of the sections, but I think it would be useful. I mean, we've read them already, but it would be useful for City Commission to have an idea of what is already in there. Can you go to the next slide? Next slide. Next slide. This is the last one. Okay. And here's where we have the meat of our discussions. Any item with an asterisk is that an item that we have voted on and approved as a recommendation. And I'm actually missing one of Mr. Tijerina's recommendations for cost, but we can talk about this. I wish I had a pointer, but if you go to the sixth item under the line. Oh, can you point?
Do you want me to go back a couple of slides?
No, go back there. Goes there. So this amendment is City Commission can remove one PUB board member per year with majority without cause. And then the next few to the right are different amendments that are that fall within removing any number of PUB board members with supermajority. And you can have for cause, and it could be fiduciary, breach of fiduciary responsibility, or for cause could be with filed and published charges and a reasonable opportunity to defend him or herself. And under here would also be just any cause. That does not include published charges. And the other one under here would be without cause. And it would be really, City Commission can remove any number of PUB board members with supermajority. And there's no need to have a cause to go along with that. So that's where, again, right now I have 4 of them listed, but in reality, it's actually 5 that would fall under here. Next. And this is just to provide an idea of the other items that we've been working on. And we can, if whatever we have like voted on, we can list here, or the other ones we can add whatever else is under discussion at that point by next week. And that's the end.
There's 2 things that I'd like to reinforce as much as possible. One of them is that there was, at the very beginning of our work, there's a graph that Gerardo has presented that shows that first you have to figure out what the problem is, then you have to figure out what the solutions are, and you have to start with a broad array of possible solutions and work your way down to some specifics. And it's a good graph. It's very helpful for my clarification. So as we started out, we were trying to figure out what specifically are we getting to. And that's why we set out a goal at the very beginning of this that says, here's what we're trying to accomplish. It's what the three of us agreed that we believe we're trying to accomplish. The system, and I think Michael was the one who originally created that continuum from left to right, illustrates in a way that I think the public would appreciate what the range of opportunities are. But at some point, I believe that the public, and especially the city commission, expects us to say, these are the ones that we believe are right. So if what we would do at some point, be it tonight or after the public meeting next week, at some point, we would say to the city commission, here's the range that we look through. And we believe that some of these may have, maybe what you'll want to consider, but in point of fact, this committee, by a majority vote or super majority vote or unanimously voted to say, this is what we believe should be done. And I think that's what the public expects, and that's what the commission expects.
Microphone.
Thank you. To that point, we could have, for example, we could leave all the information that's already here, and then have a vote to say where is it that the committee, would most, finds the most reasonable of these 5 options to be. And then have, just mark it with a different color, with another, with a star, something, make it bold. And that might be useful for city commission to, understand, from all these different options, where we think it would be best. I also, I like the idea of showing them different options, but at the same time, I think that we're kicking the bucket over to them if we don't come up with, a way to prioritize.
Yeah, I would say that we need to make recommendations, and then we can also just share that there was many options discussed, that they can ask about, or they can take into consideration as well. But as far as what we voted on, I think that needs to be clear for the commission and for the public.
But, yeah, no, I think this is excellent job. If I could just, as for the intro, I think some of the recommendations I would have is to include the Fitch report so that they know what kind of halted a lot of our discussions and why, we're going back and forth as to, that any changes or any, just so they see that and they know, what the hesitancy is on making a recommendation.
The what report?
Fitch report.
Oh, okay, yeah, the
And then,
scoring.
I don't know if I'd want to outline that, that they're, the existing ability for oversight that the commission currently has, that, that also potentially came into play as to why we weren't adding different deals, because they can go in there and do something. And then with that, almost, dovetail that into, a lot of this, while we can make a recommendation to the charter, can be achieved through an ordinance. And that would just be something as far as the presentation. Now,
I'm sorry, I missed that first part.
it could be, well, we could make a recommendation as to, qualification or different matters in, regions or precincts and how you're going to appoint these. That can be done through an ordinance. And so while they may not, like some of these things, you don't need to go and take it to the voters to be able to implement. The city commission can do that now. And so we can say, look, if you guys want to either cause some of these restrictions as to the appointments, you guys can do that via ordinance. And that doesn't have to go on the ballot, doesn't have to be a charter change.
I see. So that would be one of the introductory slides. I think it's what was presented to us here at one of our first meetings, like difference between charter amendment and ordinance. Is that what?
Right, and I think, I don't know if our city attorneys could assist and say, look, this recommendation can be done through an ordinance amendment. This can be done through an ordinance amendment. Now that obviously we're limited it to, then, the next commission can change that, but at least for what we're dealing with now, that's something that they can implement. With this slide, the continuum, I think there's, everything in there is great. I think personally, I would probably split it up and start, with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to be separate, and then have a separate slide solely on the removal. And I think the breach of fiduciary responsibility, and I could be wrong, but that would probably be the first item there, because I think that was a removal by a simple majority. I don't think there is a supermajority requirement for that. And so you would have, basically fiduciary, simple majority, then you would go on to without cause, supermajority, and then removal. And I think those would be, if we're going to look at what we would all say we're firm on, is that you would have those items being outlined at the top. And then if you have sub-items where maybe part of us are recommending or just something that them to consider, that would be the arrows moving down and saying, look, these are additions to this that would either highlight or enhance what we're recommending. But I think ultimately we're saying we don't want unanimous anymore. We all agree that a supermajority is proper, and then I think some agree that a simple majority would be proper for cause. And then any other addition as far as a suspension or due process or publishing or anything like that would be, unless everyone's in agreement with it, which I don't think everyone's going to be, that would be something that, look, these were also recommendations for the city, but we're not at a complete consensus that these should be agreed upon. That would, my 2 cents.
What does the committee think about splitting up this figure that way?
What I would really appreciate is somebody from city communications department helping us out with the graphics. Because frankly, we've got, well, someone is obviously qualified to do it. I don't know about professional time to be able to do it. And then I'm not qualified to do it. I'd like to have somebody from City Hall help us with the graphics on it. But I think that we can extend we can disaggregate, if you will, as deep as the committee wants us to go. We can disaggregate by each individual section. That's fine, but we need somebody who's got some time to do it.
And I mean, ultimately, the agenda will have each individual item as we voted for, right? So independent of the presentation, the city commission is going to have to go through each one that we officially voted and passed.
Who's going to present it?
Well, this question. I just wonder if the acting city manager would care to comment on my request.
Yeah.
I believe she's now not acting city manager, but yeah, just city manager.
Okay, it just goes to show how fast time flies. Congratulations.
Request?
My request was that somebody from media communications in the city hall help us develop the graphics.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We can help with that. We want to be supportive. Just send us all we can meet with whoever you'd like to meet and help you with the graphics.
We may end up with just a list and a concept, and then ask somebody to develop a first draft and send it
Absolutely,
back
we
to
can do
us.
that for you.
You guys have any comment, Jennifer, Will? Honest feedback?
This is for next week. That's
Yeah.
my honest comment.
Yeah, and so who's going to present it?
There's going to be a workshop. Obviously, the workshop is from your committee, so it should be the chairman, vice chairman. It should be the two of you, as is the norm for presentations given by a committee. Then on the individual items for consideration, I'm not sure who is supporting the item. I know last time it was the committee along with the city secretary's office, and then the public hearing, I believe, if I recall correctly, was done the same way.
I guess I just want to open it up to the committee just to question whether we should do it, the chair and the vice chair, or if there's anybody that wants to recommend, and maybe we can vote on who presents, or maybe there's a team of people. I think this is a really good start. I think it takes a lot to just put it pen to paper. I think the subcommittee,
Well,
has a
and
good
keep in mind,
grasp
this
on it.
part is part of the presentation. There's action later on, and that action can be, as far as the motion, is who will present. Ideally, it would be the chair or the vice chair, but if it wants to be delegated as a body, you can do that.
yeah, I mean, I would just open it up. I
And
mean, we don't
On-
mind doing
On the
it.
presentation for Tuesday, it'll show the way we're reading it here as y'all present it to us, where it's already been changed and everything, where the line items have been entered into the amendments of the charter, correct?
Well,
like
it's
you
gonna
have it
take some
before.
work. I think it's gonna take
No,
coordination.
They've already done, because what we present is what's already been approved. It's
Yeah,
not,
in the agenda,
yeah.
they will
Yeah,
have
when we go
each
before
individual
them, it's-
item.
It's what's been approved, this is where we're at, and, yeah, so, it would be, and anything pending would come on the last meeting, correct? Okay.
Correct. Microphone.
What, well, I think it needs to
Sorry.
be, I mean, I agree, I mean, I think we have to go in there with, some reasonable form of a recommendation and not just say, look, this is what's been approved. I think when we were going through this, we were approving,
The thing
different
is,
items
the
that-
recommendations that we have that have already been set is what got approved.
right,
We
to,
don't,
to submit to the commission, but I mean, there are, I mean, there's a slight,
And-
variance in these, and I think if we could, and we can come in and say, look, these are different options, however, I can tell you that,
The-
100% of our committee agree that there should be,
And those
unlimited
different
amounts.
right, and
up
those different
there.
options were canceled by a vote. So they don't play into what we've already approved.
No, they haven't been canceled. I think there's a consensus, everyone here can agree that there should be no limitations as to how many people can be removed, right? I think, everyone can agree that you can be removed by a supermajority either with or without cause, right? Everyone can agree on that. And so the only.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we voted on it, so maybe
Yeah.
not everyone individually agrees, but as a
So then
collective.
The only two issues would be, without cause, if that should be submitted, or with cause, supermajority, or
What-
simple majority.
Right.
And
I
that's
think,
it.
Right.
I think if we were to vote today on which would be, like the middle ground
Like-
that we can all agree on, it would be, I agree, supermajority with cause.
Hold on.
And then we could even distill it to which definition of cost do we use?
Yeah.
And we could have that be, but I don't know if we can vote on it today. That's the issue.
I think can we make this?
I
vote?
did make this as part of your presentation. I made it a item for individual consideration and action. So you
Mrs.
can vote on this later.
So
Ms.
we
Jennifer,
could
can we go
vote.
back to the slide where you have it, where it has that at the very bottom? Okay,
Which slide?
the one where the supermajority and all of that reads at the bottom of the charter? Where
You're-
Are you
you're-
talking
on-
about the
on
one from our
Yes,
presentation?
exactly. Right there. Okay, so this is what they're going to see when we go and present it to them.
No, we're trying to come up with the whole point of that subcommittee was to create a presentation that we could all agree on.
Right.
It's a
And-
difficult task. This
And
is-
our agreement is what we voted on.
But not necessarily. I mean,
Yes.
No, I think
that's-
you can still present, everything that was agreed upon
Yeah.
to have the city commission look at.
But
And
No,
then still
we're here
summarize one.
To stop all of that. That's, our committee is put together to come up with the ideas that we've already come up with, that are already posted here. And that's what gets presented to them. And then for them, and it's up to them whether they consider it or they don't consider it, or they themselves amend it and change it.
Right.
And then they vote on it.
I don't think we're
I
disagreeing.
think we're saying the same thing.
Because that's what, it's happened before.
No, but Yeah, I think we're
But
saying.
this is what they're going, or am I, Jennifer, am I wrong on this? This is what they're going to see, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So us giving them the ideas that we've had prior, it's null and void.
No, well, I
Your,
mean, this,
your what you present during your work session can be anything from what's in your presentation. But what they will be voting on, what we will be presenting to them are the motions that you voted on to say, take this to city
but
commission
not this
for a
exact slide.
recommendation.
Not this slide that's on the computer.
No,
right
not this exact slide.
No, but you need to give them context. And in order to give context as to what's been voted on, I think you need to explain why certain things were either brought up and not voted on, because, I mean, the deal is to give them enough information so they're making an informed
I
decision.
wholeheartedly like agree with that, because we need to be able to present it in a way that, and I think you hit it. For me, it was the Finch rating. I was stuck on it for, felt like months, but I just couldn't get beyond that point. And so I think that if we can, introduce it as a part of the dialogue, and which led to these recommendations, I 100% agree that we need context. We can't just present A, B, C, D, and then you guys decide.
I think the balance is going to be, I mean, the presentation, I think the intent was to be clear, right, to the commission and to the public.
Yeah.
And even though we've said about presenting options or discussing options, I think the balance of that is just confusion, right? So it has to be done in a way, where maybe we're not going to get into all of the options that we discussed, but just say there's a spectrum, but we need to be clear as far as what we voted and what passed. Yeah. So that's what I think, my understanding, that's what Vito is saying, is we can't be talking about some
What
of the
didn't pass.
other things that we've discussed in the past, because that's going to create confusion
Yeah.
and we haven't voted on it and not all of us agree on it. So what we collectively voted and passed should be what's clearly stated. And then we can also say, and there was other options that we discussed, but this is what we voted, because ultimately that's what they're going to vote in the agenda itself
I think we
as
can all agree
items.
on that, yeah.
Can you go
Yeah.
to the continuum that they had up?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The continuum, the graph? Can you pull that?
Oh,
up?
you go back to the continuum, sorry.
Because I guess here, there's
Right,
Right.
the ends are the ones that were discussed but
But-
not voted on.
so the ones that have been voted on have the asterisk. And so the hybrid elected appointed board, that was not voted on, and so are we saying to remove that?
Yeah, I think.
City of Brownsville overtakes, PUB board, we remove that? Is that what you're? So just the outside two would be removed, and then we'd be here. And then I think if we could just,
That will be left up to them to decide.
Yeah, I would agree that
Yeah.
if on the
Yeah.
continuum, we just add, we just have, without having to.
Like
footnote
anything to the
ref-
left,
the
that,
asterisks.
that's
then there's gonna be the question of why is that there? Was that discussed? Was it
exactly.
voted on?
yeah.
And then,
So the only thing we're going to present is anything that we've already voted and approved.
Right. So we just take off the ends for now.
and so I guess the only two there that require PUB to present and require quarterly public meetings, those would be the only two that could be done via an ordinance amendment, right?
I mean,
just to
it
be
doesn't
clear, Mr.
have to
Chairman.
be by an ordinance, but
Right.
it could be by an ordinance, correct?
Just to
The
be
other ones
clear,
are currently already in the charter, so you'd have to make amendments to the charter in order to get the end result you're looking for.
I apologize, but just to be clear, this makes it easier, not harder, that we could just drop on the far right, COB takes over PUB board. Just drop that entirely from the graph. On the far left, hybrid elected appointed board, we've never voted approval of that, so we remove that entirely. Okay, and so we do agree that we are requiring a supermajority to appoint board members. We do agree on certain existing elements. We require PUB to present the annual budget for clarification and acknowledgement of receipt rather than approval. We do agree that we would require quarterly public meetings, blah, blah, blah. COB would could remove one board member per year with supermajority without cause. We did vote apparently on that. The COB can remove any number of PUB board members with a supermajority for cause or even without cause. That decision, that A or B decision, we voted both ways, and in that case, the city commission's gonna have to choose or enhance.
Right, either choose or enhance it, or kind of hybrid it to,
But it doesn't matter, that part does. So, we've still got other items that ultimately we will consider. For instance, even today, people were bringing to me the idea of this, that any individual commissioner could appoint somebody, which I thought, today was the first time I heard a good way to do that. So we may yet, and I'll ask that item be approved for some point in the agenda. Now, I need clarification for my helpless mind. Next Tuesday, the chairman and the vice chair are charged with making a presentation to the city commission that is an interim report, is it not? It's not the final report.
no,
it's an
correct, it's
interim.
just based on what we have so far.
All right, and then on
It-
Wednesday,
Okay, so to clarify, you can, interim report, I would not call it the interim report. I would say it is your final recommendations because that is the first hearing, the first public hearing that they are going to have to order the election. In order to order the election with the ordinance, they have to have the propositions on the language needs to be included in the ordinance. However, at the second hearing, the second reading, not hearing, I'm sorry, the second reading on February 7th, amendments can be made to that ordinance, which then in turn could be further recommendations by this committee, but you would have to go back to the commission to present on February 7th to see if that is something they would even like to entertain at that point in time.
Wait, but this can't be final. I mean, what I remember from 2 years ago is that, so after we narrowed down with, the recommendations, amendments that we wanted, there was still a process of drafting the language, because as they're written in your presentation, right, they're not really adequate to be presented as amendments. So I guess maybe you have, right, a week to come up with that, and then we won't see them?
So if you recall from the last time around, you guys were appointed almost a year prior, correct, to being committee members. This time around, you were appointed 2 weeks before your first meeting. So last time around, what happened was on December 8th, there was a work session. Michael and I can't remember who the other, I think it was Patricio, correct? Went and did a presentation on the work session as to all the items that were voted on by this committee as to what they would like to go forward with, what they were discussing, and any further discussion by the city commission. And then at the next meeting, January 5th, there was an item for individual consideration. That item for individual consideration took everything that Michael and Patricio presented, as well as all of the recommendations and further information that the commission wanted to see as part of the voting for the consideration. And then at the next meeting was when we had the ordinance drafted to call for the special election for the charter amendment. This time around, all of that I just said needs to be done by February 17th. And city commission needs to approve it. City commission only has 2 meetings left before February 17th. Therefore, everything you're doing right now tonight is going to be technically final for the commission next week, Tuesday. You will be making amendments to whatever happens at that point in time. If, as Mr. Merrill suggested, you want to come back and make further recommendations, that's all fine and good. It does not mean that commission will even consider them at that point in time, because there is an ordinance that has been drafted with language that has propositions
gonna
already
draft
on
it?
them.
who's going to draft it? From what you've seen today, who's going to draft that? The language for that
We have to. It's legalese. We have to be the ones to draft this information.
And is this committee going to have an opportunity to see that before it goes to the commission?
So really, the only thing that gets drafted that is any different than what's in the charter, you're just changing a word based off of what you've put in there, correct? Unanimous to supermajority. So the language, I guess, that you're asking to see is to say, shall the city commission or shall the charter in this section be changed from unanimous to supermajority? That's it. That's all the proposition language says.
I admit that it's tedious and it's not the kind of work that I like to do, but I would assume that it would be appropriate for the committee to have some opportunity to review that.
Well, and
Otherwise, let me ask another question. Why are we having a public meeting in the event center next Wednesday after the city commission has had its first vote?
so that they can have a say-so in whether or not they agree with any of the amendments that have been put before them, as well as any additional concerns that they may see with the language that city commission has voted on. Again, it's not final on Tuesday by the city commission. It can still be amended in the next.
Yeah, it's
in-
just not, we're not gonna be able to take any new things, I guess is what you're saying.
You can, and we can put it on individual consideration and action for them to add, and it can be included as part of the ordinance. That is absolutely 100% fine. What I'm saying is it will be difficult
Can I ask
because
another
Need a
question?
second vote?
Is there anything that prevents the city commission from calling a special meeting for the consideration of this item?
no, I mean, they just have to be able to do that.
I'm troubled by, I understand the crowded schedule and the timeline. I'm troubled by the need to even prepare something for next Tuesday. If we voted it and you're going to write it, why do we even need to spend the time as a subcommittee to develop a graphic?
Well, I mean, and I think your draft, if I'm not mistaken, was to prepare a presentation to present to the city commission. And it's based on those recommendations that y'all have already approved as a majority, right? And so then it would be our job to turn those recommendations, if they're approved by city commission, into the propositions.
But if the city commission next week has the same level of debate that we've had in our meetings, what are the odds that,
To get it done?
or they may well get it done, but will they get it done with any
Well,
consistency?
Honestly, worst case scenario, if they cannot get it done by the time that we have to call the election, then it'll be a November election. Now, that not necessarily is something that I'm recommending that will occur, but that's worst case scenario. If it doesn't happen in May, and they still want to do it, then it will be in November.
We could also have a special meeting on maybe Monday, to see the language that you all draft.
Yeah. Well, but we wouldn't be doing it so that we could approve the language. We'd be doing it so we made sure that we understood the language. We could also have a meeting on Monday to finalize, for instance, the graphics that we asked for. And I agree with you too, that being able to present some rationale for where this came from, why it's there, is critical, I think, for the public to be able to appreciate it, and then for the commissioners to be able to rationalize how they do it.
As it was with the last committee, it was the responsibility of the city attorney's office to draft that language because of the legalese that's involved.
Not objecting to that.
I also just don't want to throw I don't want to be called the wrench thrower, but Monday is a
holiday.
holiday. And so nobody will be at City Hall to let you all in if you want a meeting.
Well, again, you're under the same gun that we are in terms of time frame. So it's not a question of
Can
looking
we
for
have-
blame, but how do we resolve our issues?
Can we have a special meeting on Friday? I mean, as much,
Let's see where we go after, where we are in a little bit, once we go through some of these items.
they need to have it done by Tuesday.
We
We have
to
to
have a
submit it.
special meeting by Friday, you won't have the 72-hour notice under TOMA.
Well, it's just to your point, David, I think.
I mean, it might also be in the best interest to just do a November election.
I was gonna
Except there's
suggest-
a,
Yeah.
there's a huge cost associated with that,
It's-
probably upwards of $200,000 extra for the city.
Have to, yeah. remember that from last year. I mean, 2 years ago.
And that's because the city has no other ballot issues in November. and
That's correct,
what
sir.
will be.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think we're trying to rush through this thing right now. I know we got started late. I think that if there's any hiccups, this committee is going to get blamed for it, that we did not prepare, we did not meet. So what other elections are in November? Are there school district, TSC that we know?
I have no idea.
Can you find out?
Well, it would.
We would still have to pay.
Yeah, it would still be at a cost.
Well, you're going to pay either way.
Yeah.
But right now, we're already paying for one. The way that you're suggesting for November is the city will not have to pay for two.
Yeah, but you're entering into a new budget year in November.
Well,
You can budget for it when you adopt your budget for September.
I think I
It's an
agree.
additional
It can be a
200,000.
lot more costly to make a mistake here because we're trying to rush through it.
I don't disagree. This can be one of your recommendations in your presentation to the city commission. That would be my recommendation.
And so what are we, I mean, I think we've gone through a lot of these items, pretty significantly to where we have something narrowed down that I think is presentable to the commission, at least with regards to removing a board member. So I'm not.
I see what you mean.
Let's go through these items, see what we're missing, and then as opposed to talking about it now, let's see what other item we're gonna have.
Go to
Right.
the items for consideration.
Microphone.
Let's go to the items that are here for consideration. And at the end of this, we may be satisfied that we've got enough of a recommendation to make to the city, and we can then go forward. If we're not happy, then we can come back.
Okay.
So now we're on, Mr. Chairman, I think we're under item 5.
Item number 5, items for individual considerations. Number 1, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the
Yep.
contract limitations for the city manager.
I make the motion that we ask the Charter Revision Committee, or that the City Commission be entitled to develop a contract not to exceed 4 years with the city commissioner.
It needs to be removed from the table.
I have a motion to
All right,
remove.
motion to remove?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I apologize for the overstepping. My motion is that the city commission be entitled to a contract negotiation that is up to 4 years for the city manager,
There's a
Not to
second.
exceed 4 years.
not to exceed
Correct.
4 years.
I'll second that. There's a second.
There's a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Item number 2, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the appointment of a Brownsville PUB Board of Directors by individual commissioners with approval from the supermajority of the city commission. 1 appointee per commissioner.
I move that it be removed from the table.
Second. Okay.
And
You have to take your vote.
A point of clarification. Is this that would enable each commissioner to make a recommendation but still need the supermajority?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay.
Or is that, where's the language?
It's still on the table. You
Okay,
guys
I'm
have to
sorry.
take your vote.
All in favor to remove from the table?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but where does it address that the PUB board member shall come from a specific district?
The
It
motion
doesn't.
I was prepared to make is exactly to that point. Which is, I make the motion that each member of the city commission, when elected to a full term, has the ability to appoint one member of PUB
Well, recommend.
to
Recommend.
nominate.
Yeah, nominate.
You're
right,
correct,
right.
nominate for approval by a supermajority of the commission.
What about the at-large?
Each one,
No, what about the at-large?
at large included.
Same, all the way across the board.
All 6 of them would have the
Oh,
same
I see. Okay,
responsibility.
I got you.
They would have each commissioner, both district and at-large commissioner, would have the ability to appoint a member of
Nominate.
PUB.
Nominate.
Nominate a member, thank you, a member of PUB board for a 4-year term. The 4-year term would occur not on the date of the election of, and I don't know how to phrase this, but basically what I'm trying to get to is that instead of nominating some person the very first day they show up, they don't nominate them for 5 or 6 months. The reason being, until you've been here 4, 5, 6 months as a city commissioner, you really don't know all the things. You have too many appointments that you have to make right away. And so I'm suggesting that there be a temporary lag of 5 months, 6 months.
Within the-
David, do you want to include in that motion, term limits for PUB appointees, or is that?
That's already in the charter, though.
Yeah, it's two
Right.
years.
Well, no,
I don't think
we
so.
would have to amend the part where the term of that elected official. So if that elected official doesn't get reelected,
Right.
it would.
That term ends.
Okay, so there are term limits already for PUB
No.
board members?
I
Are there term
apologize.
limits?
There's term limits
There are?
that serve 4 years.
There's a term, but there's not a term limit.
Right.
Yes, there is. It's two 4-year terms, if I remember correctly.
Right.
All right, that's fine.
It is self-limiting in that the city commissioner is limited as well
Correct.
to 2 terms.
Right.
And what I envision, as I try to explain it, and I apologize, I can't do better, but as I envision, the city commissioner would come in with the May election, is that correct? And then they would appoint perhaps January the 1st for a 4-year term. It would overlap slightly with the next election cycle, and the next city commissioner would have the ability to appoint. They could reappoint the same person, but that effectively gives a term limit that is.
But why can't the term of the PUB board member be parallel to the term of the city commissioner?
Yeah, that's,
My thinking is that if you try to come in on the very first day and be a commissioner and you have multiple appointments, because that's the trend.
Well, you've got holdover provisions as well, so.
You've got
you
some,
know.
but you've got a lot of pressure to appoint people right away. So I'm just saying that I believe personally, it would be better to let that be a January to December calendar year. And that it may be that the commissioners would decide that that's the way they want to do a lot of stuff, but it would be a calendar year, January to December. Each commissioner would have the opportunity, but they'd have a little breathing room as they get started. So I apologize again.
I have no problem with that. I
Yeah.
think that's fine.
But who's gonna be removed? That's my issue.
Okay, and then maybe it should be 2 different motions, because the motion is how do you appoint? There would be a second motion as to how do you remove, or how do you replace? For
Well,
instance.
When the term expires.
when the term expires.
Right, when the term expires, correct. Suppose they die in office, and there's only 3 months left in their term in office. How do you replace them, and does the replacement understand that it's only a 3-month appointment?
Or they don't have to appoint anybody.
Or, and what I'm saying is, that's fine. The removal is a different process from how they're appointed.
Death is a good removal process.
I mean, when you start, like, let's say, whenever the first year that this amendment, let's say, kicks in, which board member are you going to remove to allow somebody else to
Okay,
be
like
nominated? That was my first concern. Second concern is so like, let's say you have a city commissioner who is given the opportunity to nominate, but they don't get a supermajority. So how many more opportunities are you gonna give that city commissioner to keep nominating and perhaps not getting a supermajority? So then what happens? The seat stays empty?
Yeah, until they get a supermajority.
Exactly.
You
Like
could
what
do
happened-
that, or you could say until.
Like
Could
what
you just
happened
have
in Washington.
one, like each city commissioner gets one nomination? And then if they don't get the supermajority, they don't get the supermajority, and so anybody else can nominate?
Well, that's what's occurring now, and which has occurred.
Well, that's why I wanted to do it to where the city commission appointed district representatives.
Exactly.
Obviously, the recommendation by a sitting city commissioner, but it doesn't have to be that person. Anybody, you could nominate for District 4, as long as you get your super, as long as they live in the district, that, I think that should be foremost versus
Well,
a
I
city
think we're trying to
commissioner
include too
appointing,
much.
a
We're
crony.
putting too many elements into one motion. Mr. Chairman, just as a point of order, I'm trying to make a motion.
Okay.
I made a motion. I think if it doesn't get a second, it dies. Somebody else can make another motion, but we really shouldn't discuss it until it has a motion and a second.
Okay. The motion is, the motion on,
You want me to try to restate it?
the motion is, if I recall correctly.
You had a lot of sub-motions.
Yes, exactly.
Just trying to
Is
figure out
the-
what the, in 25 words or less, what is the motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
The motion essentially is that every commissioner, either district or at large, is going to be able to nominate a member of the PUB board that is a four-year term that begins January of the year and ends on a December 31st. That four-year term is appointed by nominated by a city commissioner or at-large commissioner to be approved by supermajority for the four-year period.
I'd like to offer just a friendly
No,
amendment.
let's first vote on that, and
What-
then we can, okay, if we vote on it and it dies, we can bring it back with a little
No, but
amendment.
can I offer an amendment?
Only if I get a second.
No?
If I don't get a second, then you can offer a new motion.
Yeah,
I'll
because
second
the-
it just to flush people out.
Okay.
I'll second it. Okay, so my amendment would be where everything that you said, with the exception of a city commissioner nominating somebody from that district, the commission as a whole can nominate somebody from each particular district instead of having the individual commissioner do it.
Well, no, because then,
And that may take care of that, with your point about if they can't get 5 votes.
well,
Yeah, I think the issue there is gonna be if I'm District 2, that I nominate somebody for District 1 in advance of the District 1 commissioner.
Well, the important
Because
thing is that the
that's already
district
occurring.
is represented, not so much that a commissioner gets to appoint somebody. It's more that the district is
Okay.
represented by somebody on the board.
Yeah,
That- that's
if-
what they've done.
If I may just interject for a super quick second. It sounds like you are wanting to amend Article 6, Section 1, letter C of the current charter provision, which sets out the current terms for the PUB board members, which they are staggered. So by doing this motion, obviously you're changing the rules for that. So you would be making amendments to letter C under the current charter. So if you could please refer to that portion of the charter.
And so-
Because currently, right now, it says position 1 of the board shall be that position currently held by, states the name, which term shall expire, and so on and so forth.
So,
This will change that.
so yeah, to that point, it's, this one's, the initial one expires 09, 10, 11, 11, 12, and the last one's 13. Now, if you are looking at that, then I guess the amendment to that would be, it says position 1 of the board shall be that position currently held by Al Villarreal, whose term of office shall expire on July 1st, 2009. Now, we could say position 1 currently held, and then that position 1 will be appointed by someone within District 1. And so you equate to each one of these positions to the district. 5 would be at large, 6 would be at large,
And-
and then you, I think you
yes.
stick with the.
No,
the
just have
current-
staggered terms.
I think, and
well,
then
and that's
if
the
you
thing,
happen
like,
to be in office at the time or you don't, well then, you just missed out on being able to make
Right.
an appointment. But I think changing all that, you're gonna have to go in there and have this
So-
term expire, then this one change, and you're gonna have to amend quite a bit as opposed to just defining position 1 to mean someone
Yeah.
from there appointed by someone.
also, Mr. Merrill, on the voting, some come in November, so they would just have till 2 months to appoint someone to that vacated seat. Because we have one in,
Yeah, and we also don't have to vote on this. I mean, I was the one who brought it up.
I
and
think that's a good
the-
idea.
The issue that I
Because-
wanted to address is just to make sure that, we reduce the jumping the gun, right? Somebody on the commission, makes a motion where others already have, a person to consider for nomination. But again, we're running late, right? Not just late tonight, but late in the game. So if we can't simplify it, just keep that in mind, right?
Can we table it?
We can, but
Yeah,
then
let's
it's gonna be,
We're just kicking the can down.
yeah. So I would say let's try and decide. I
And
would be okay with not even voting on it.
But we already have a second.
But yeah,
So,
I guess we'd have to
yeah.
vote, so
So it's,
let me
just
just.
verify on the
add-
motion.
Let me clarify as much as I can. I agree that that there's a tall hill to climb if you try to change the schedule for when the board members are appointed. I agree that that's a technical challenge that we'll have to find a good engineer to figure that one out. But the concept of having individual commissioners appoint or nominate somebody for election, I think is critical for the relationship between the city commission and the PUB in the future.
yes.
Because I'm getting constant feedback that the city commissioner needs to have a pipeline, so to speak, to find out what's going on and to be able to insert ideas. Because right now, there's sometimes you can get a voice and sometimes you can't. You can go to the public hearing, public meeting, but that doesn't mean you're going to be heard. So I would stick with, and I'm willing to withdraw the element that says change this timeframe. But I think that the concept, and the city commission may be able to work this out better than I could, but the concept of an individual commissioner having the right to nominate, I think is critical.
I agree with you. I really do. I am concerned about trying to do this in a very limited time frame, and again, rushing to make it for this upcoming election. Something like this, like it really takes more time. I feel like, similar to the PUB issue, like there are so many very important things to consider with PUB. If the bond ratings really do change based on the recommendations that we're making, they're gonna call it the Gerardo tax, the millions of dollars that PUB is gonna pass on in extra cost to its ratepayers. Now here, because there's so many things to consider as to who's gonna get actually removed, who of the board members, for whenever this takes place, it's really very short time. We're not able to see the full picture of the, the consequences of this decision. So and city commission is not gonna have any more time than we do.
Well,
Might be better to, we are making a recommendation to continue the charter review committee.
I think
Yep,
that
so,
that is
I mean,
part of it.
You made a motion, David. I think there was
Yeah.
a second if you want to change it. And then we'll vote. We'll have to vote at this point, right? So.
Yes.
Again, I'll stick with the need for commissioners, both district and at large, to be able to make nominations for the PUB board. And I will say that, in parentheses, that means a real 4-year term, not a 3-month term. So that's the motion. One
It-
little other bit.
Point of clarification. From their district.
From their district.
Well, I didn't specify.
Well, I mean, that's the purpose of having each district represented.
Yes.
So it would, I don't have no problem doing that way, but it's got to come from that commissioner's district.
Well, I think the commissioner's been elected. and
If
so
the
he
To
can
commissioner
represent.
has been
Whether
elected,
it's, yeah,
and that's the person who's really responsible. If he or she wants to appoint a well-qualified candidate who doesn't happen to live
In the district.
in the district, then
Well,
they
that's
should
what
be
we
able to
have
do that.
now, though.
Yes,
Not every
except-
district is represented on PUB.
No, not by, it's true, but they are represented by their city commissioners. And that commissioner has
No,
a
they're not.
direct pipeline to the name,
Uh,
to that.
Dis-
P-
district
If that
one.
were the case, we
This-
wouldn't be here talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, no. If the individual commissioner had the right to nominate, and only that commissioner has the right to nominate for his district position,
But-
the fact that they are or are not a resident of that district is
But-
not as important.
Well, that kind
At
of
the
defeats the
moment-
purpose of having each district represented on the PUB board.
No, the
No.
purpose is so that the
I
commissioner
mean,
has
the
the.
commissioner is going to represent the district independent of where the board member is So that might be a limitation and it might be causing, us to be cautious about it. I think codifying that each city commissioner can nominate a person is really just codifying what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Independent of the district.
Now,
Yeah,
exactly right.
independent of the district and independent on the year when they do it and so on and so forth. It's just codifying what they're doing now. And then, next charter review committee, I guess, can maybe,
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can.
no, we're just calcifying it. We're just stating it.
Yeah, but we're fixing nothing.
We,
Because you could technically have every single PUB board member coming from one district,
exactly.
the way it is right now,
At
though,
large.
with that proposal.
And
But
if
the
you-
the city commissioner will have a direct line, i.e. pipeline, because they're appointing that particular board member, right?
From their district.
It would
Right,
be
and they have
great
the-
if we can get district representation. And they would have to determine that as a representative for a specific district. If they can come up with a candidate within that district, it would be in their benefit, I would say.
Exactly. And the elected official that got elected has the opportunity to place someone there and not have someone carry over from a previous city official.
I don't know how you're gonna get it all drafted by next Tuesday. I don't see how.
Yeah, so-
Okay,
So
we can take
David-
a vote, and if it fails, we can bring it back as an agenda item, correct? And,
Yes.
yes, okay. All in favor for what Mr. Merrill proposed, say aye.
Aye,
Nay.
Those that oppose,
Nay.
nay.
okay. Can't win them all.
But no. We're gonna bring it back.
But it's off the table, so now we can move on.
Yes.
Do you want to make a motion though, Carlos, that it
An
be from?
alternative?
That
Yeah, an
comes,
alternative at this point?
that'll come when they ask for
Well,
our
it's still on the table.
Yeah,
agenda.
It's still to be considered.
We can still,
Until we move to the next item. If he wants, if you've got a good.
My only, look, my only caveat is that I.
Okay, we're going to the next one
that-
because it's already failed.
I'm sorry?
And we're gonna bring it back.
Okay, just tell me when.
Yeah, we can
Well, I'm
bring it
hearing
back
Mike and I'm hearing David and everybody
on,
else.
on
talk.
agenda items. It hasn't, it failed here until we can get
No,
resolution
Mr.
on it.
Chairman, I'm sorry, that's not the case. The case is that if he has an alternative motion while we're still in that agenda, we can.
that's right. That's right.
My only difference in that motion is that make sure that a district is represented by the best qualified person. And there's got to be qualified people in every district.
How
But
do you
that-
know that?
but
Have you
that-
ever tried? I've tried.
Yeah,
So-
I've tried.
The alternative,
But
your
then it,
motion
then
would
it
be
gets us to
exactly
the
mine.
qualification part.
Business owner,
In the alternative, your motion would be, as I presented, with the additional item being that must be from the
The
district.
That's correct. Everything else is cool.
You don't want to make that motion?
I just did.
okay.
And
We
I'll
have a
second.
motion. There's a second. All in favor?
Hold on, let me, I'm not understanding
Okay,
how you're
well-
fitting that into C. Because, I mean, so how is that gonna, how are you gonna work that in with what the charter actually says? And so, I mean, you have the remaining members of the board shall be appointed by the majority of the city commission to serve the following 4-year terms of office. And so you're suggesting changing that to the remaining members of the board shall be appointed by a supermajority as nominated by the city commissioner to serve for the following.
That
but
that
then-
represents that
and so
district.
I'm with you
Yeah.
there, but then you got position 1, position 2, position 3. And so I think you need to define those positions so that the commissioners know who's up and who's going to be going.
Well,
So,
but that's not our role.
but it is.
Well, our role is to determine that each district is represented on the PUB board.
And so then the
That's all I'm saying.
recommendation would be allow the commissioners to appoint someone that's from their district.
Correct. Well, also coupled
Okay.
with that, that's actually applies for the position.
Well, nominate, which would be approved by a supermajority, and then you guys go and figure out how position 1 through position 6 relates to that recommendation. That's what we're trying to do here?
It's not rocket science.
But you're also limiting what a single commissioner can.
But it's also for next week, Tuesday.
Yeah.
If I'm a city commissioner, then you're tying my hands in who I can nominate. Maybe I know you know,
Your
a
best friend.
PhD water engineer from another district,
They could be
but,
at large.
but no, but
They could be
if,
the at large.
but if I'm representing District 4,
Yeah.
then it has to come from District 4.
Correct.
And I cannot nominate the person who I know who is best qualified for the job. You're tying my hands. You're actually too
Well,
restrictive. in
but-
this.
When you run for a district commission spot, your hands are tied. Because you're running for that district. You're not representing everybody per se.
But this is totally different.
Well,
But-
no, it isn't different. The point
No.
is, well, look, we have two choices. One, we leave the language to where you can have all the PUB board members living in one district, or you give every district an opportunity to be represented on PUB. Those are the options that you have. So
And-
we're assumptions being made that, well, there may not be any qualified people out there. Well, we don't know. You don't know till you test it. And if they don't find somebody, well, then they come up with something else.
It could be done by ordinance too.
Do that too.
If you do it by ordinance, then the city commission has a lot more flexibility as to, you know, if they try it and it doesn't work, they don't have to wait, you know, at least 2 years in order to change that.
Well, again,
Let's vote
we
on it.
make this recommendation. At the end of the day, the city is going to ratify it or say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to go with David's motion, or we're going to go, everybody can appoint whomever they want. At the end of the day, that's my motion. That's a recommendation. Let the city decide. I mean, if they think it's too complicated and they don't have comfort in their district, that they can't find somebody that meets a criteria.
Hold on. On that, it was serving the term of the elected official, correct? Okay, so just to, Daisy,
Yeah, just take off the January 1st.
let's say you're incoming District 4, and I'm the outgoing District 4, and 3 months prior to me leaving, I appoint the PUB member,
Nominate.
nominate. No, well, let's say I nominate and gets appointed. That means you wouldn't get an appointment for PUB for the next 4 years, your term. So
What
do
if-
you believe that's fair?
I
What if the-
really do agree with having the city commissioner being able to appoint somebody for a direct line of communication. I think that is advantageous. Now, the way we make it work is gonna be complicated because of the way the charter, you know, is right now and the way things are working right now. All I'm saying is that we're really at a crunch for time. We don't have the ability to really figure this out for next week or, you know, again, with all the motions that we still need to go through is
Okay.
really not feasible. But I do agree with you that having a commissioner being able to appoint somebody, not from the same district, then that's too restrictive. But it is a good idea. I think it would make the process work better. It would increase communication.
Okay, so we have a first and second on Mr. Casco's,
And my only issue was
right,
having a representative. from
exactly.
each
So that's the
district.
next in vote, that they come from their district. Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Three to what?
Can you do a roll call, please?
No,
Nay.
Yay.
Nay.
yay?
Nay.
Nay.
4-3.
4-3.
There for 25 years.
One thing we might consider is that would be something that we consider has enough validity to debate further and bring to the second reading as an individual item for the city commission.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind it being an ordinance.
one for both of y'all, I think I would have, yeah, I mean, I would vote in favor if we would just change the language from position 1, position 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to reflect the actual districts. So, you know, basically what we have here is the remaining members of the board shall be appointed by supermajority as nominated by the commissioners sitting in the respective seats. And then you define position 1 as District 1 to be appointed by the commissioner. You define position 2 as, and so you're not messing with any of the dates. You're not, if you're up, you're up, but we're staying with the same deal
Yeah.
that's in the charter and all. it
What
does
if we
is-
recommended not for a city charter amendment, but for an ordinance? We, you know, we could always, in our report, mention that.
Right.
That is something that we believe is a good idea, but we want to give them more flexibility to be able to change it.
You
as
can't amend the charter by ordinance.
No, we
So
wouldn't amend the charter.
but you would have to amend section C of the charter to get what you want. And that would be trying to amend the charter by ordinance. The charter can only be amended by the charter.
No, but
amendment.
they could, an ordinance, the city commission, as I read it, has the ability, right now, they say this, the majority of the city commission to serve the following 4 terms. The city commission can enact an ordinance that wouldn't be able to make it into a supermajority, but they could say each commissioner shall nominate within their respective position.
As long as it's not in conflict with the charter.
Right, it would not be in conflict.
So what Mr. Tejeda is stating, that they could come from anywhere in the city, but the appointed seat would be the commissioner at large or that district seat. So that would mean if District 2, it would serve the term of that
Position
seat,
2.
that position seat. Okay, so,
So that would be it.
okay.
Mr. Merrill's proposal, except with the addition of finding the actual districts as
Okay.
they run on the starter.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I second that.
Is that a motion?
Yes,
Yes.
Wait, was that for ordinance or charter amendment?
for the charter.
Can you repeat it?
It would still be,
It's the
It'd
same
be
thing,
the
but you
two
can
to
get
the
anybody from
district.
anywhere.
Right,
they
Dave,
would serve
no,
that
it'd be
seat.
Mr. Merrill's proposal, however, I'd take it a step further to define the terms as position 1 would be District 1, 2, District 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5 would be at large, and 6 would be at large. And so basically, we're just defining which positions are going, otherwise it's going to be a nightmare moving forward.
and there'd be no limitations on whether the
They
pool comes from one district or another.
Correct. So,
I second that motion.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it. Did you all get all of that?
I did.
I'll watch the video.
Thanks.
Sorry about that, Jennifer.
Next item, consideration, discussion, and action of any related to the absences of the Brownsville PUB Board of Directors.
Move to untable?
Move to
I
untable?
second.
Second.
I think currently the charter, what is it, 100 and, let me go back to it.
Yes, it's 160 days.
What are you recommending, Michael?
Bringing it down to 60,
60 what?
60 days. So
Why wouldn't you want to put meetings? That if they miss
meetings work.
10 meetings in a row unexcused
I think
or something?
Currently, it has that 180-day
Yeah, but that's
phrasing,
6
but,
months.
which would be about 4 meetings, absent like special meetings. But I would just motion to have it reduced down to 2 meetings.
I
Use
could
the
go with
phrase
2 or 3. If they miss 3 meetings in a row
in a row.
In a row.
or within a prescribed period of time.
Interesting. I mean, I was thinking about in a row, like two or three
So
meetings
they
in a
could
row. but
show up to 1, skip
then,
2,
yeah,
show up
that's
to
the same
1,
thing that's
skip
happening
2.
now.
That's kind of what Nerth was explaining, is that has been, has occurred in the past. And I think that was,
I wouldn't do it where it's in a row. I just do it, if you miss 3 meetings within a
a year.
6-month cycle or whatever, come up with something. I would support that.
Yeah.
That's a great, I mean, I
would-
think that's that's
6 months. cycle.
improving what exists today.
Make your motion.
Wait, how about 4 meetings in a year?
4 meetings in a year.
That's
fine.
fair,
Yeah.
right? Unless,
That's fine.
unless excused by a
Yeah.
supermajority vote or something like that?
Well, I mean, if there's a, family
The-
emergency that they
So
can't make.
the language as it,
they're-
So if I may interject again, letter F states about absences and 120 days continuously. If you could refer to that when you make your motion and how you would like to amend that letter.
right, so right now, any member of the board other than the mayor who shall be continuously absent from all meetings held by the board for a period of 120 days shall, unless the member shall have been granted leave of absence by unanimous vote of the remaining members of the board, be considered to have vacated that member's office as a member of the board. And so I'm I'm guessing your,
We're gonna change the 180 or 160 to
so
4
who shall be,
within a year.
I think 4 meetings in a year is
Yeah.
fine.
so who shall be, so you remove who shall be continuously absent from all meetings held by the board for a period of 120 days to shall
4.
be absent.
4 meetings
Is
in
it,
a
is
year.
it a
Within
roll?
a
is
year.
it- Let me ask you just a
No.
clarification. Is it a rolling year?
Yeah.
Is it a rolling year
Yes.
or is it a calendar year?
Calendar,
All right,
calendar year. That's the motion.
that's your motion. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
Just clarity, was it unexcused or just 4 absences
4 absences per year.
per year?
Unless,
Unexcused-
but the
unexcused.
remainder of that same paragraph is in
Yeah.
place. So unless the members
Yeah.
have been granted leave of absence.
5.
Okay.
So basically what you're saying is we are amending the section that says for a period of 120 days to say for 4 meetings held within a calendar year.
Correct.
Now, that is all meetings,
All meetings, including special meetings.
right?
That,
All meetings.
all meetings,
Not just, okay? All meetings.
not
Can
consecutive
we
either.
amend the motion to make that what it is, what you're trying to say?
Mike makes that motion.
I think it says all meetings in the F.
Yes, yeah, it does.
Got it? Okay, good.
Next item, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to qualifications of Bronzo PUB Board of Directors.
Move to untable.
Move to untable.
Second. We discuss now?
And before you start, this is letter D. Qualifications.
So when we make the motion, let's reference the section.
My commentary is, is the committee in favor of requiring qualifications for all PUB board members, such as a college degree, business owner, whatever y'all want to, come up with? Or do you want to just leave it, you can appoint your gardener if you want, if you got the votes to do it.
I think it should just be open, personally.
See, that's the problem I think that we have faced, that we have good, good people in their own environment, but really they don't have the background or the qualifications to run a multi-million-dollar entity like PUB.
Right, so
But now we'll get a supermajority to appoint, so it will be even.
Do you think that'll take care of it?
I think that whoever's making a nomination will probably have to justify why they're nominating. And you,
Okay.
so you can't appoint your gardener because nobody will vote for him or her.
Oh, I would. I got a good, damn good gardener.
now that could
I
be
have a
done
smart gardener.
through through an ordinance as well.
Okay.
NASA.
But yeah, I would agree.
Well, then I don't have a motion then on that.
Move to,
So,
table.
move to void.
If you just don't make a motion, it just falls to the floor.
Okay?
Okay.
I heard it fall.
Yeah. For time's sake.
The next one,
The next
since
one.
there
Item
is-
number 5?
Item number 5.
since there's already 2 terms in the charter.
I'll leave it there.
It has to be read by a city secretary first.
Consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the number of terms a Bronzo PUB Board of Director may serve.
Move to untable.
No, just hear it drop to the floor.
Okay. Yeah, because it's stated in the one prior to, their term would be
Right, the 2 terms.
yeah.
It fell.
Yeah, because it's stated on it'll serve the term of the district.
Next item?
Next item.
Item 6, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, regarding whether the city commission shall approve the appointment of the Bronzo PUB's CEO.
Move to untable.
Second.
My thoughts originally on this was just to have the city commission get involved in the increases in compensation if they exceeded a certain percentage of top administrative staff. It wasn't so much that they ratify the appointment of the CEO. So I don't know where that one came from. That was my recommendation, that the city have some input into compensation packages for top administration.
Okay. Motion on the,
No motion.
there's no motion?
Oh, I'll go ahead and make a motion that the city approve compensation to upper management when it exceeds 10% in any given year, correct? Or you can make it 15%, just something that's reasonable.
Can that motion be made under this agenda item? Even though it's different?
Are you asking us? I'm assuming.
Yes.
I think so.
What's she saying? Looking at me.
Yeah, so it's worded, shall approve the appointment of PUB CEO.
Right.
Not necessarily compensation.
So if we need to table that and bring it back to address compensation, I'm willing to do that. That's not a problem for me.
Well, this item wouldn't be tabled, but you could, because if you tabled this, it'd be the same thing again. It would be for the appointment. You would raise this under number 12 for future agenda items.
So how do we do it so that it doesn't come back in the agenda?
Just don't make a motion and let it fall to the floor.
I like when those things fall to the floor.
Item?
Number 7, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to proposed amendments to the Brownsville City Charter submitted by the city attorneys and city managers' offices, including but not limited to Article 6.
Motion to remove from the table.
Second.
I was gonna recommend, because there's some additional changes coming up, that you could leave on the table, that we can bring back the other changes.
Move to table?
Second.
Second.
Number 8, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to city commission member salary compensation and or reimbursement.
Well, this one is just to add in amendment, like I said, it would be an independent amendment to the charter, which is that no sitting city commissioner can qualify for whatever increase in compensation gets voted on.
Yeah,
So-
meaning that, because she had previously recommended for the city commission to consider the information that was provided on compensation schemes from different cities. So she's adding that the commissioners that are on now cannot be compensated as per that change, if they change it.
So potentially you could have a new person come in May that would get compensated, but the ones that are already there are grandfathered in and they don't get compensated.
Correct,
For that term, or what if they're running for reelection?
for that term. What, no? Next term?
Well,
Ever?
mean,
I think any
what-
voting.
I'm fine if it's ever.
Anyone that voted on it cannot receive the benefit of it.
Okay. I think it just removes some of the bias,
What bias?
True, I may run for district.
that they couldn't vote to
For
give
themselves.
themselves a
You
compensation.
know, I know that there's been a lot of discussion regarding compensation. You know, when somebody runs for public office, they know what the responsibilities are, what the compensation is, et cetera. They do it for public service, not for anything else. So if we're gonna take this to the city commission, that's already been on a ballot once and it failed miserably. And I don't know if we want to do that again, because once somebody starts voting no, automatically they're gonna vote no on everything. So I can't support compensating, city commissioners. I mean, if you want to increase their
Right,
stipend.
but that's not what's on the.
So we didn't,
No, it's just that the ones, whoever is sitting right now in office cannot ever be the recipient of any increase in compensation.
When it goes,
we
so I-
when
I-
it goes to the voters, they're not gonna understand that. All they're gonna see is city commissioners get compensated.
Yeah.
And that's what they're gonna see. And again,
And
it
the
was
way
a-
that reads it, it sounds like they're getting compensated
Yeah,
already.
and it failed some time back, and I just don't think that with the dynamics and the optics that are going on, it'd be a good time to even present that on a ballot for fear that, number one, I think it's gonna fail. And number two, I'm just wondering if it would jeopardize other charter amendments on there, people just saying, well, no, 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 all the way
Mr. Chairman.
down.
So we didn't,
That's my only.
I mean, I can make the motion, and if, like, you don't agree, that's fine, and we just move on to the next one.
Is that, that's what I was getting to, is that we've already approved by unanimous vote a form of recommendation for the city commission to consider this. If the refinement that Ms. Zamora believes we should have in the form of a motion is to enhance that, so to speak, with the provision that there will be, none of the sitting commissioners will be eligible for that compensation.
Okay.
That would be all that she's asking to
Wouldn't-
do.
And I
and
really
the-
don't see the city commission adopting that.
Well, I think there's a chance that the city commission may say exactly what you've said, which is the risk is that you'll kill the whole ballot. Whereas, but I think that the intent is to enhance the motion, or the intention is to enhance it with that specific element. If you're on the
Yeah,
commission
and-
now, you can't get it.
The spectrum of compensation also wasn't, I mean, there was levels there that were, 2,000, 3,000 or something like that, right? It wasn't like full compensation.
some of them were
So-
not compensated. So we didn't make a recommendation to have anyone.
Just leave it open and let them decide if they want to do it?
Right.
That's
got
kind
no
of
problem
the
with that.
idea.
That's what the approval
Yeah,
was.
I got no
Everything.
Yeah, it
problem.
was,
They're not
it was
gonna do
real
it.
general.
And
Yeah.
we recommended that they start with the research that Mr. Flores had done on pay that was at various cities around Texas.
Right.
As a starting point.
But just out of curiosity, the cities that were looked at, were those city manager run
Yes.
Yes,
also?
correct.
And they were still getting compensated?
Yes.
Wow.
There were
so-
different levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were different levels.
Yeah, I mean, some were just like per year, I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's say $9,000 per year.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah, that's reasonable.
So I make the motion that no current city commissioner can get an increase in compensation from a charter amendment.
And just for clarification, the first motion that needs to be done is to, by the individual that made the initial motion, would be to reconsider the action that was done at the last meeting. It
Well,
would be
this would just
seconded.
be like an amendment more than reconsidering.
But that's how it's amended, by reconsidering, because you
Yeah.
already have a
So
motion.
you can't have it be a separate
I
motion?
didn't know what it was, but okay.
Yes.
So you
I'm-
want it
I
to
wanna
be
make a
a
separate
separate motion to say we're amending the motion we approved?
I guess I don't want to amend the motion. I want to like have a different motion.
So
That's what
keep it-
Mr. Trevino
Yeah,
was
so
trying to
keep in mind that when we present these, they're going to see, the city commission will see compensation